Welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and give folks just a moment to enter the Zoom room as we prepare to get started. Thank you all for being here. All right. See, we have some more folks coming in. Welcome everybody. Really thrilled to have you here today for a discussion on Work for America's latest case study, which is called Mission Ready Recruitment. I know we have folks jumping on from all across the US, so as you're joining the webinar, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat by sharing your name, where in the country you're joining us from, and who inspired you to pursue or support public service. And for those who are new to us, Work for America is a national nonprofit dedicated to making public service a more desirable, accessible, and stable career path for individuals, families, and communities. State and local governments across the country have been grappling with a growing workforce crisis and struggling to recruit and retain the talent needed to sustain essential services. As Work for America develops tools and tactics to support governments through this crisis, we have been deeply inspired by the U.S. Marine Corps' systematic approach to recruitment. When the Marine Corps faced similar challenges several decades ago, they opted to build a highly effective, mission-driven recruitment model that thrives, even in the most competitive environments. Their approach offers valuable lessons for public sector leaders looking to strengthen their own talent pipelines. Today, we're very excited to speak with Colonel Bill Gray about how the Marines have successfully tackled recruitment and how local and state governments can apply these strategies. We're also honored to be joined by Mayor Phillip Jones of Newport News, Virginia, a former U.S. Marine Corps infantry officer who continues to serve as a major in the Marine Corps Reserve. A few notes on logistics for today. Please feel free to use the chat for any questions or comments throughout the session. We'll be keeping an eye on it, and we'll also have dedicated time for Q&A later in the agenda. As mentioned at the top of the call, we also encourage you to please introduce yourself, share where you're joining us from, and let the group know who inspired you to pursue or support public service. If you experience any technical issues, Zara Topbus is managing the logistics of today's webinar and is available via private message in the chat. Finally, please note that today's webinar is being recorded and we will be sharing the recording afterwards. Thank you again for joining us, and now I am thrilled to officially kick us off. Our first speaker, Mayor Phillip Jones, is the 27th and youngest directly elected mayor of Newport News, Virginia. Under his leadership, Newport News received the All-America City designation for the first time, a recognition of the city's progress and commitment to community engagement. Mayor Jones is also a former U.S. Marine Corps infantry officer who led peacekeeping and security missions across 4 continents. He continues to serve as a major in the Marine Corps Reserve. He exemplifies the leadership and service that both the Marine Corps and local government demand. Welcome, Mayor Jones.
Wow, Caitlin, thank you for that introduction and thank you for all that you do. I know that it's a turbulent time, but I'm really excited to join everyone here. So I'm Mayor Phillip Jones, current mayor of Newport News, Virginia. You might ask, where is Newport News? And I love my job because I get to be the chief brand officer of my city. So Newport News, we're located in an MSA of about 1.7 million people. We're about under 200,000. We build the world's greatest ships. So if you are on an aircraft carrier, submarines, they get built here in Newport News. Caitlin, I appreciate this conversation because not only am I the mayor of a city of 3,000 city employees, but also I spent the last 13 years, whether active or reserves, in the Marine Corps. And my mom and dad are also Air Force pilots. So I get to see, sort of the public, private, and the non-sector worlds all coming together. I think when I look at what the Marine Corps has taught me, 1, it's taught me servant leadership, but 2, it's really taught me how I organize my thoughts. And I know we're going to talk about the case study, and I don't want to take any thunder from Colonel Gray, but the Marine Corps was faced with some challenges a few decades ago, and they've been able to completely change how they look at human resources. We're doing the same thing here at Newport News. And so what I would encourage all of our listeners is whether you are pivoting and want to go into local government, into state government, 1, the need is there. We need everyone to enter or re-enter the arena every single day, whether it's our police officers, our firefighters, our engineers. We all exist to make sure that we have the highest quality of life for all of our citizens. And I'm biased. I'm currently a major in the reserves. I've always said the Marine Corps, we can learn a lot of different lessons. So thank you, Caitlin. Thank you, Work for America. Thanks for letting me jump in. I'll turn it over to the Colonel. Thanks all.
Thanks so much, Mayor Jones. I really love the way that you described yourself as the Chief Brand Officer. I think that's an excellent description of one of the many hats that a mayor wears, and really appreciate you offering some insights. So thanks again. Moving on, today's discussion is going to focus on how public sector leaders can learn from the Marine Corps' proven approach to recruitment, as we have said. But before we dive into that conversation, we want to share a short 60-second video that highlights the Marines' recruitment philosophy and why it has been so effective. Oh, I think we need to come off mute, Shifra.
Sorry about that.
All good. Take two, as we say. Here comes the video.
State and local governments across the U.S. are facing a growing workforce crisis, struggling to recruit and retain the talent needed to keep communities running. The U.S. Marine Corps has demonstrated that strategic recruitment can succeed even in the most competitive environments. They took a bold approach. They built a systematic recruitment program that not only met the challenge, but set the standard for decades to come. They elevated recruitment as a leadership priority. They invested in recruitment. They built proactive, not reactive, recruitment systems. They created clear, repeatable processes, and they communicated a unique value proposition. The Marine Corps didn't just solve the staffing problem. They built a talent pipeline that has fueled their success for generations. Read the case study today.
Wonderful. And we'll drop the link in the chat for that video for those who want to revisit it or share it with others. And with that, I'm thrilled to introduce retired U.S. Marine Corps Colonel William Gray, also known as Bill. Over his 30-year career in the Marines, Bill dedicated nearly a third of his service to recruitment, including as Assistant Chief of Staff for Operations at Marine Corps Recruiting Command and as a District Commanding Officer, where he led large-scale recruitment efforts. Beyond recruitment, Bill served in both operational and strategic roles, including at the Joint Staff, the F-35 Joint Program Office, and multiple tours at Marine Corps headquarters. Today, he brings his expertise to the private sector as Managing Director of Talent Management at Steerbridge, a firm focused on innovative solutions to government challenges. Bill's deep expertise in recruitment strategy has been invaluable to Work for America, helping shape this case study into a practical, results-driven guide for public sector hiring. He also generously connected us with current and former colleagues whose insights further informed our research. Bill's been an advisor to Work for America since well before our launch, and we're so grateful for his time and guidance. Bill, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks, Caitlin. Appreciate you inviting me to this forum. I will put the admin note out there. I know you put it out there before. Although everything I'm going to say is complimentary to the Marine Corps, I'm biased. I don't represent the Marine Corps in my current role. I just certainly learned the good lessons learned that they taught me over the last 30 years and brought those practices to the corporate world.
Great. Thank you so much for the reminder. And to kick us off, I was actually at a conference earlier this week, and I found myself talking to a Marine Corps veteran. So naturally, I asked him what his recruitment experience was like when he joined the Marines, and he told me that he wasn't recruited. So I asked, that makes no sense based on what I know. How did you end up in the Marines? And he told me that he wanted to be in the Army. And so one day he walked into a military recruitment center, and the only branch of the military represented there was the Marine Corps. So the Marine came up to him, asked him why he wanted to join the Army. And he said, out of a sense of duty to serve my country. And the recruiter looked at him and said, well, sir, it sounds like you were a Marine. And that was that. And so I explained to the person I was speaking with that the interaction may have seemed simple and kind of coincidental, but that it's actually backed up by the Marine Corps' uniquely effective approach to recruitment. So would love to just kick off with you giving us an overview of what that approach looks like and how Marine Corps recruiting works.
Yeah, so need to start with a little bit of a history lesson. Both you and the mayor talked about the situation several decades ago that the Marine Corps founded itself in. Into the draft, all volunteer force, General Burrow, General Wilson realized, okay, we have to do something different in order to continue to bring people in to make Marines and win our country's battles. And for a while there, the standards got pretty loose. And so it was really General Wilson, General Burrow that started it. You fast forward through the years, and General Mundy and General Krulak brought it to the next level, created a Marine Corps Recruiting Command, instituted the practices from the front end at the most strategic levels where, okay, we are going to set up a recruiting command that's not 8 or 9 layers down in the service, but the head of recruiting is going to report directly to the Commandant of the Marine Corps, because that's how important recruiting is to the service. And all the things that I will say that the Marine Corps is an institutionally paranoid organization. There's been time and time again throughout history, especially after World War II, where other services said, well, why do we need a second land army? We can get rid of the Marine Corps. Army can go on ships and so forth. And there has been time and time again, going back to the days of like Victor Krulak, that the Marine Corps has been saved. We say that, the United States doesn't need a Marine Corps, it wants a Marine Corps. And so that kind of mentality has been built into the standards that the Marine Corps has insisted on recruiters go and find. Marine Corps still doesn't allow beards, has the most strict policy on tattoos and things like that, for example. And all that translates into the work recruiters have to do and the people that the Marine Corps sends out on recruiting duty. The picture, the poster Marine is who the Marine Corps sends to represent it out in the local community. And all that has kind of morphed over time into the system the Marine Corps uses. It's the only service that has majors, 04 commanders, as recruiting station commanding officers. It's a board selection. The top 4% of majors are selected. And there's a saying that Marine Corps Recruiting Command, or MCRC, throughout the Marine Corps, MCRC eats first. And so before orders are cut every year, Marine Corps Recruiting Command holds a board with every single available major in the Marine Corps, for example, selects those, and then cuts loose the rest of the population that the Marine Corps didn't pick to be RSCOs to be assigned elsewhere in the Marine Corps. Recruiters, the Marine Corps understands how important it is for putting the best foot forward, and the absolute best Marines are selected to go to be Marine Corps recruiters first. And then the rest of the population, special duty assignments, drill instructors, embassy duty, and everything else gets what's left after the Marine Corps selects who it's going to send to represent the institution out in the wild. And then with that, the population that is selected for recruiting duty, whether it's a recruiting station commanding officer, a recruiter, a sergeant that's going out for the first time, they invest heavily in the training and education in order to recruit professionally. And that's not just sales skills. It's being systematic, being organized, having learning the system so that they can be successful when they apply those skills and that training to the problem set.
Great. Yeah, I love how the approach to recruitment treats it like a science. So often we think about hiring as this art form, but there is a way to make it systematic and scientific. And I love how the Marine Corps has done that. Can you speak a little bit to what led the Marines to develop this approach? Were there any key kind of influences or models or precedents that helped them to create this systematic approach?
As far as the science and the systematic piece, back in the late 70s, early 80s, they looked across the commercial landscape and, okay, who is doing business and is very successful in sales? And so they went to Xerox and adopted the Xerox sales and systematic strategy. And so the example you just gave of the young man that wanted to go join the Army, he was recruited. I mean, and you alluded to it. The Marine recruiter recruited him to be a Marine instead of go be a sailor. And so it starts with sales skills. And that's just, I mean, when you hear sales, you think, okay, you use car salesman, and there's not a very good connotation of that. But it's really understanding, okay, what are the innate needs of the individual you're speaking with? And how do you convey what the Marine Corps offers to fit their needs and fulfill that? We used to call it the need behind the need, or the primary need in their life. Some may say, well, I want to go to college. That's my need. And then you start digging and peeling the layers of the onion back. And the individual's real need behind that is they want their parents to be proud of them. And so that's really what sales are all about. understanding the individual, what is the problem or the desire that the individual is lacking in their life, and how can the organization fulfill that hole in their soul, if you will. And so that's part of it. The other part is being systematic. So how do you, in a organized manner, plan out your day, plan out your week, plan, okay, I need to have a pool of people that I can consistently call on. What is the process for following up with them? What are the methods in which I'm going to try to engage the population, whether it's through marketing, whether it's going out and area canvassing, whether it's to use the telephone, whether it's to use social media. And then how do I use different methods in order to contact with an individual that may not answer the phone, but may be available in another means or mode. So having an organized process to use all the tools in the toolbox across the board so that nothing falls through the crack.
I love that. I love the proactive approach as well. It's not just about waiting for folks to come to you, but it's about going out and finding folks who may be uniquely suited to be a Marine, but they haven't yet thought about it or thought about themselves in the Marine Corps. And also love the Xerox model. And I think it's a great reminder for state and local government folks who are on the call today that many of the solutions we're seeking already exist and there's no need to reinvent the wheel. I think that's part of why we've really loved learning more about Marine Corps recruitment, and would love to hear a bit more from you, Bill. What makes Marine Corps recruitment really stand out, especially compared to other branches of the military? How does it differ from ways in which other branches recruit?
Well, I kind of touched on it a minute ago. So what interests my boss fascinates me, right? And so if the chief of the service realizes that that's a priority, everybody in the organization understands that, okay, everything else is subordinated to that effort. If it's not important to the person in charge, it's not going to be important to the organization. And you're not going to allocate resources in order to make that effort successful. So that's thing number one. The investment of putting, you get what you pay for. If you put in time and effort and resources into training a force and providing them the tools that they need. For example, every single recruiter on recruiting duty in the Marine Corps has his own or her own government vehicle in order to get around and go to those high school visits and everything else. And that's, that cell phones, computers, everything else, it costs money, but it's important. You have to resource the force. And then kind of getting back to the not necessarily the tangibles, but the intangibles piece. So what is unique about the Marine Corps? And going back to that idea of institutional paranoia, what sets the Marine Corps apart? It's the intangibles. Something as simple as, okay, there's pride of belonging. I belonged for 30 years to the finest fighting force on the face of the planet. I took pride in that, and that's something that does not apply to any other force out there. And so that's what kept me going for 3 decades. And there's intangibles across the board that the Marine Corps has honed in on. And by peeling those layers of the onion back, we can figure out which intangible would apply to whatever individual. So as state and local governments think about that, what's unique about the city? What's unique about the state? Or what is the selling feature, the proposition value, aside from a paycheck, that makes them special? And so Marine Corps has gotten very good at that. The other services are catching on. For example, the Army just last year changed their organization such that their head of recruiting now reports directly to the Chief of Staff of the Army and the Secretary of the Army. So these lessons work, and if they're applied, more success will follow.
I love what you said about the intangibles and really expressing the unique value proposition of the Marine Corps. Can you talk a little bit more about the sort of benefits tag exercise that the Marine Corps uses in recruitment? Because I think it's a great example of how you focus recruits on the intangibles that the Marine Corps provides.
Sure. So it's a tool that I remember when I was a young high school senior going and talking to a recruiter. They had benefit tags back then. So it's 11 tags with words or phrases on them, and they're different colors. The bright color ones help the recruiter realize that, okay, we're talking about an intangible tag, pride of belonging. That's something that's unique to the Marine Corps, and you can talk about how the Marine Corps is different than other services. something as simple as educational benefits. That's a tangible benefit. You know, the GI Bill is the same for any service you go into. So what the Marine Corps does is they'll have a candidate sit down with a recruiter and they put these 11 tags out and they say, okay, rank them from most important to least important, 1 through 11 in order that's important to you. And they'll take the top 3, pull them out to the side, and really spend time on walking through the top 3. And if I can get a kid in the chair across from a recruiter in person and they pick 2 or 3 intangible benefit tags, game over.
I love it. I think one thing that our audience members are likely thinking, especially those in state and local government, is that's great. What the Marine Corps does is amazing, but we don't have those resources. So where can someone in state or local government start, even if they have limited budget and limited staff?
Well, it's something like this is a good start. Getting educated on what's out there. You know, some of the stuff we're talking about doesn't take a lot of time and resources, but I will tell you that investing in a professional recruiter that knows what they're doing, and I'm not talking about a young kid a year out of college that has talent acquisition behind their current title, first job out of school. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about somebody that has been recruiting throughout their years, knows what they're doing, understands how to be systematic, understands sales. That person is worth their weight in gold, no matter what salary you're paying them. And they're out there. There's a whole lot of retired or former military recruiters that are exactly who I'm describing that would probably love the opportunity to do this in their local community.
Great. Last question for you. Do you remember your own experience being recruited into the Marine Corps? And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So my dad was a flyer in the Navy, and for the longest time, I thought I wanted to fly in the Navy. And I thought, well, the Marine Corps is tough, and they're the toughest out there, but I really want to fly, and so that's not for me. And then I got a Marine got a hold of me and informed me that we have an entire 4 air wings in the Marine Corps. We have the same. A lot of the same airplanes that the Air Force, Navy, Army have. We have helicopters, we have jets, and once that education occurred, and I knew that okay, I could be part of the best fighting force on the planet and be associated with aviation. That's what sold it to me.
Great. Any final thoughts for this group?
I will put this out there. So if you look up William C. Gray on LinkedIn, please connect with me if you want to talk one-on-one. I'm happy to do that. I am a firm believer in public service. I did it for a large part of my life. I'm here to answer questions. I can help. I can provide tips, and if it's something as simple as, hey, activate your network. If I'm in City X, USA, there may be somebody out there that's looking for a recruiting job.
That's great. I cannot emphasize enough for those here today how valuable that offer is. We take Bill up on it all the time. So thank you so much for being here. For folks who have immediate questions for Bill, please do share them in the chat. We're gonna bring him back towards the end of today's session to do some Q&A. So please feel free to jot it down there, and Bill will have a chance to answer them. And thank you again for all that you do, Bill, for being here today. I would like to next kick it over to Shifra Goldenberg, who's our Chief Programs Officer at Work for America. She's going to add a bit to what Bill just shared by giving an overview of some of the key lessons from our case study.
Hello. Thank you so much, Caitlin, and thank you, Bill. It's been such an incredible experience to work together on this case study. Like Caitlin said, we are very grateful for your generosity with your time and your experience and your wisdom. So thank you. I will bring back my slides. And like Caitlin said, I am going to go into a little bit more detail about the case study that Work for America just put out that tries to capture a lot of the wisdom that we just heard from Bill and some additional highlights about Marine Corps recruiting and what makes it so special. This case study is available on the Work for America website. We will also drop the link in the chat. We definitely encourage you to take a look at it. And also, as Caitlin said, just like if you have any questions for Bill, drop them in the chat. If you have any questions for me or about the case study, feel free to drop them in the chat and we will get to them in just a minute. And with no further ado, here are some of our case study highlights. So, as we just heard, the Marine Corps' recruitment success is not a coincidence, right? This is the result of intentional, structured, and really proactive strategies. At Work for America, it's our mission to support state and local governments who are working on their workforce challenges. And we hear all the time about how hard it is to fill critical roles. We know that those challenges are real, and that's why it's so exciting to have the opportunity to learn from the Marine Corps and the success that they have had in public sector recruitment. We identified 5 main takeaways from the case study about how we can take what the Marine Corps has done successfully and bring it to state and local government. Number 1, in the Marines, top performers are selected as recruiters, and senior leadership spends a lot of time actively supporting their work, training them, and making sure they're properly resourced. Public sector agencies should all consider how they can move towards that approach, giving recruitment teams the authority, resources, and visibility that they need to be successful. The second, closely related, is investing in the proper resources. Most local governments, of course, do not have the budget for a large-scale recruitment operation like the Marines. But even dedicating one staff member, like Bill said, one talented recruiter can really make a difference, or training the staff that you have on some basic recruitment skills. Any resources that can be sent in this direction do start to make a difference. The third is being proactive, not reactive. Posting a job and hoping for the best. We've all tried it. We know it's not enough. Agencies need to be actively building talent pipelines, engaging with candidates even before jobs are open, and using digital outreach, events, other ways to stay connected to talent so that you're building that pipeline for when you have the roles. Establish a clear and repeatable process. Recruitment shouldn't be ad hoc. It shouldn't be an afterthought. Governments need structured processes and training for their recruiters, and most importantly, clear metrics of success so that you know if you're heading in the right direction and making improvements over time. And finally, think about what makes your agency stand out. Whether it's about meaningful work, job stability, career growth, or civic impact, your agency needs to tell a compelling story, and that's how you attract people who want to be a part of something bigger. These are broad principles, and if the governments are able to apply these principles, following the Marines' example, we do expect to see better hiring outcomes, stronger teams, and a more resilient workforce. Bill spoke about the intangibles exercise, and we just want to dig into that a little bit more to make some of those principles we just went over a little bit tangible. So this is one piece of the Marine Corps approach that governments can start using right away, doesn't require a lot of resources. And the power of this approach comes from how it blends structure with personal one-on-one engagements. Here's how it works. When Marine Corps recruiters meet with a potential enlistee, they lay out plastic benefit tags, and we have an example of what those could look like right here. Each tag represents a key advantage of Marine service. Some of these are tangible, like a competitive salary or tuition assistance. Others, like leadership, discipline, and a sense of belonging, are quite intangible. The recruit is asked to rank these tags in order of importance. And like Bill said, if they put a couple of those intangibles right at the top, you know you have them. This gives the recruiter the opportunity to really go deep on those priorities and have a meaningful personal conversation about why they prioritize those intangible benefits and how the Marine can help them tap into those. It really turns the conversation from a basic salary discussion into something much deeper, helping recruits reflect on their long-term goals, what they truly want for their future, and how the Marines can help them get there. This exercise is about getting people to really engage with the choices they're making. And by physically sorting the tags, recruits start to think differently about their motivations and aspirations. It helps them see that the Marine Corps isn't just offering a job, it's offering a path to growth, leadership, and purpose. So we offer this as an example of how local and state governments can similarly approach conversations with promising candidates and really zoom in on the things that make working in state and local government successful. Like I said, we think there's 3 major benefits to this exercise. Instead of just focusing on salary or benefits, it helps recruits, especially folks who might be young, think about what they really want from their career. Even if somebody picks a tangible benefit like salary, and even if you know that the role you're offering might have a lower base salary than some other roles, it still gives you a chance to open that door and start the conversation. Recruiters can use this tool to find people who are really aligned with the mission and values of your organization, which leads to stronger and more committed candidates. And finally, it can also help with retention by helping to screen for the right fit. If somebody's really only interested in tangible benefits, it might be a signal that this is not the right fit for you. This helps you as a recruiter identify mismatches early, focus your energy where it's productive, and ultimately reduce turnover. This is just one example of how a structured but personal approach to recruitment can lead to better hiring outcomes. It's also just one example of the type of resources and idea that are in the case study. Again, we'll drop that link in the chat in a moment, and we would love to check it out. Love you to check it out. We're going to turn to Q&A in just a second. But before I close, just like one more thought about how you can apply the lessons from the Marines. Think about your workforce and think about the Marines, the way that they take their most exemplary people in the service and put them front and center in the role of recruiter. So think a lot about who is telling the story of your agency and how are you equipping the right messengers with the right things to talk about. Make sure that those folks who are your messengers know how to tell the story of why public service matters to them and why working for your city is important and meaningful. There's a lot of different tools to do that, but if that's the direction you're heading, that's the key to strategic recruitment and getting the right people into these mission-oriented roles. With that, I will stop talking. And Caitlin, I know you've been keeping an eye on the chat. So come on and jump back in and we can start taking audience questions.
I don't see any questions in the chat. So folks, please do feel free to drop them in if there's anything you'd like to hear more about from the Work for America team, from Colonel Gray. We are here to answer them. Or perhaps we have said all we can say and everybody on the call feels prepared to take these takeaways back to their city or state. I think what Shifra just said, I would definitely underscore. Personal stories are so important. It's part of what's been really fun reading through this chat is just seeing what's inspired the folks who are on the call today to be in public service. And I think folks who work in public service are not getting rich doing their job, but they're able to live a great life in those roles. And there's real meaning and impact to the work. And so we just constantly encourage folks to think about those reasons why public service is so meaningful to you and make sure that you're sharing that with the world because it is important. I see we have one question in the chat. What intangible benefits are very similar between the Marine/military and local/state government? And how do we best bridge that connection? Bill, do you want to start? And we can also pull the slide back up that had those benefits and talk a little bit about which ones overlap with the public sector.
Sure. Two things come to mind right off the bat. There's nobility in public service, whether that's at the state, city, locality, or national level. So that's thing number one. Thing number two is there's probably no better way to gain experience for certain jobs, for certainly, but for life lessons. So you can go in as a young kid out of college or even out of high school and go to a whole plethora of jobs and not have the experience that you could get in local government to set you up for Maybe somebody has the desire to go into politics someday, right? You can't get the same experience working at Amazon that you do at the state or city level in public service. And that's a lot of the ways that we talk about the Marine Corps. Something as simple as self-discipline. All right, we key in on that, whether somebody uses tuition assistance on the slide there. Every service has tuition assistance, but then we'll take it and say, okay, self-discipline that the Marine Corps is going to give you will use allow you to use your tuition dollars more wisely and give you the skills needed to be able to study and be successful at taking tests and on and on. So those are some of the kind of things that I think of that are similar when it comes to telling the story of public service at the state and local level.
Yeah, that's great. And I think one of the things we've talked about before, Bill, which I find really impactful, is the way in which when you have a recruit come in really focused on the tangible benefits, you walk them through that process of realizing that there are intangibles that underlie each of those things as a way to really underscore the meaning making of being a Marine. I think speaking a little bit to ways in which this could be directly translated to the public sector, there's of course a couple of things on here that do have direct overlap. Leadership, personal growth, pride of belonging, these are all intangible benefits of public sector work as well. One thing that we often focus on is the ability to impact your community. Working in local government is the best way to see your impact on the streets and sidewalks of the place where you live and to get to really do work that benefits your neighbors. I think that's one additional intangible that comes up all the time for local government. We also, Work for America has been doing a series of hiring events with state and local government hiring managers and folks who are leaving the federal government. And when we host those events, we ask state and local government hiring managers to start by pitching their city for 2 minutes. And it's an incredible exercise because you do hear a huge range of both tangible and intangible benefits. Everything from, I'm from Arizona, where we have gorgeous sunsets and no daylight savings time. Isn't that a place where you want to live and work? To benefits like we offer microtransit benefits. So you can take a scooter for free from your metro stop right to the office. And it's a great way to see the community and check in on your work on the way to the office. Really thinking about all of the things that are true benefits to the work that you do and figuring out how to clearly express those to candidates and to your employee base on a regular basis will go a very long way in tapping into both those tangibles and intangibles.
Caitlin, one point that I want to bring up in what you're talking about, this is a good example of the tools the Marine Corps uses in being systematic, but where it comes in is crucially important. I've talked about the need behind the need or peeling the layers of the onion. So if this model is used by anybody that's listening, they really need to understand is the number one pick that the candidate listed really their number one. And maybe they don't even know that. So a good person that's trained in sales or, a professional recruiter can peel those layers back, start asking questions on, well, why is that important to you? Why? Tell me more. And then it may evolve into really what they're talking about is an intangible desire when they listed a tangible characteristic up front. And then you go back into, okay, this is how my city or locality can fill that void.
Absolutely. We have several more questions coming in the chat here. One from Gia. What are some ways to be proactive and find candidates who might be a perfect fit for government service? So, Bill, you talked a little bit about how the Marine Corps does that. What are some ways that state and local governments could also be proactive? I have some thoughts, but would love to hear from you.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is if there's not if recruiting for open roles is a side or an additional duty for some other position, being proactive is something as simple as devoting resources to this problem set, hiring somebody that is a dedicated recruiter that knows what they're doing, and then plugging into all the resources that are out there. Something as simple as getting that recruiter involved in LinkedIn and going to job fairs and activating their network with, hey, I may have never served in the service, but I'm a recruiter, and I know that my city is close to, you fill in the blank, military base. I'm going to be proactive and reach out to the transition coordinators on that base and see if I can come into their transition services and pitch my city to those that are leaving the military service. I mean, the sky's the limit when it comes into ideas on how I can be proactive and take initiative to find good people that I want to have associated with my organization.
Absolutely. And I think the similarity in the tangibles and intangibles between the military and government service makes the case that you just made, which is folks coming out of the military are actually uniquely primed to enter state and local government. And that's just something for state and local government hiring managers to have in mind in terms of potential partnerships and populations to seek out when proactively recruiting. I would second using tools like LinkedIn. The LinkedIn recruiter tool helps you to proactively reach out to folks and to search for certain demographics, skill sets, geographies, etc., based on the specific roles that you're looking to fill. And it goes a really long way to reach out directly to someone. If you get a message in your LinkedIn inbox saying, you have great experience and I think you'd be a fit for local government, that's going to go a long way and get a really high response rate. It's a pretty simple thing to do with a big return on investment. To something Bill was also saying about thinking about the infrastructure of your local community, think about institutions to partner with, community colleges, high schools, universities. The Marine Corps has been really excellent at taking advantage of that exact type of infrastructure opportunity for partnership, especially as governments are thinking more about skills-based hiring and folks who are actually suited to go straight into the workforce after receiving a high school or career technical degree. Make sure that you're actually partnering with those institutions to reach those folks directly. We are also happy to help as Work for America. We think about this issue all the time. We have tons of partners who can be helpful in reaching specific demographics, setting up fellowship programs, thinking about ways to bring in a new and energetic workforce. So please do reach out to us and to Bill as he offered if we can be helpful in thinking through some of those proactive strategies. Looking at some additional questions here. Does Work for America have an approach to convince local governments it's worth it, or do you find most leaders are bought in on the premise and or need some guidance to get there? I would say today's webinar and this case study is absolutely an effort to make the case that thinking proactively about recruitment has a huge return on investment. We know as an organization that it costs cities and states money to have vacancies. When you don't have finance and accounting staff, it can lead to credit downgrades, which means you're paying higher interest rates on debt. You can't issue bond deals. There are huge impacts to having vacancies in local government. And so we cannot make the case more strongly that investing a little bit upfront in recruitment can save a lot of money in the long run. Bill, anything you would add to that just in terms of making the case to leadership that this is something to invest in?
I think we hit the drum with that before. And, if it's not important to the senior leadership of whatever organization it is, whether it's government organization, company, it's not going to be important to others. So I would think that filling vacancies is an important issue in order for that organization to operate successfully. And then part of what could help with that, something that we didn't talk about is, people that are happily employed in these organizations are some of the best salespeople and proof sources out there. So another option that would help if everybody's bought in is a referral program. I want somebody like you to fill the desk right next to you. Go help me find somebody with your characteristics. You have friends, you have a network. convince them and tell them your story on why you get satisfaction out of serving in this governmental role.
It's such a great point, and it's something that the private sector also does, right? Which is if you refer someone, you often get cash incentives when that person is hired. Thinking about a referral program for the public sector is a great idea. The last question it looks like we have here from Jose is, when I look back on my Army service, I feel that the military had a good system for advancing soldiers up the ranks with constant training and leadership schools. Do you think that's lacking in public service? How would the public sector replicate that? Bill, do you want to speak a little bit to the system of advancement in the military, and then I can speak a little bit to the public service side?
It's a very hierarchical system in the military. There's a rank structure. It's well defined. It's been there forever. I mean, so somebody comes into private, they know that they can be an E9 someday, or if they want to transition and become an officer. Second lieutenants come out of college, and they know they can be a colonel general someday if they stick with it and they go and do what's required. There needs to be a defined path and a demonstrated way that can show growth for an individual. Here at Steerbridge, we just formalized that process. I mean, we're getting to the point where we're a big small, and so somebody that's a full stack software developer that comes in out of, maybe it's their first job, maybe it's their second job, but 2, 3, 4 years out of college, they want to know, okay, if I take the step of signing on with Steerbridge, what's the growth path for me? How can I be a director of a department someday within this company? So you need to map that out, have the structure defined, and show them that, okay, this is a real thing for my organization. There is a plan. Here's the path if you want to stay in this discipline. And if you want to branch off and go do something else, there's, off ramps that can, you can go on a parallel path and do something else maybe 5 years down the road.
Absolutely. I love Wendy just said in the chat that they use that at Washington State Parks, which we love to hear. I think I agree with everything you just said, Bill, and I think this is a place where there's a lot of room for growth in the public sector at the state and local level. I love what you said about mapping it out and making it clear what the opportunities for advancement are. Mapping it out is also just a great place to start, to be able to actually look at where things stand today, what opportunities exist, where there might be room to grow in terms of the opportunities you're offering to your employees in order to retain them. One thing we think about a lot is on-the-job training and apprenticeship programs that can help folks really gain the skills to advance into the kind of next level of their career within government. And so that's one area to think about and focus on. The state of Pennsylvania has done a great job of that, especially with entry-level IT roles and helping to do on-the-job training, such that folks are advancing in salary and skill set year over year. But I think mapping it out is the place to start to identify where there are gaps and where there's room for improvement.
We'll map it out and also review the path. So if there are proof sources out there and you're talking about a mayor or a police chief or you name it, somebody that's in a position of authority that people look up to, what was their path? And that's a good proof source story of, okay, time and time again, there are all these people that are successful and they hit those buttons along the way in their career path. They started at the state and local government at this level, and this was how they got to where they are to be successful. And you'll start to find patterns there that can be a story that complements the future looking forward map out path that's part of the system, but it shows, okay, I'm not just trying to sell you some snake oil, right? It worked for these people, and that's what we're offering here.
Yep, absolutely. There's one last question that just came in, which I want to answer because I think it's very fun, which is the Marines are known for having cool jobs and having organizational pride, although most jobs actually are quite similar to local and state jobs. Are there ideas for local and state government to become more cool? And I'll let you answer that, Bill, and Shifra, you should also jump in because I'm sure you have thoughts.
More cool. So I think it starts with the identity of the city, state, whatever organization you're talking about. It's cool to be a Marine. It's cool to put on the dress blues and just associate yourself. And it's something that I used to have to deal with, especially my first tour on recruiting duty was, well, I got selected to be an admin Marine, and that's not sexy, right? But the story is, first of all, there's no unimportant jobs in the Marine Corps. We're so small, we're so limited on resources that if your job wasn't important, it wouldn't exist. That structure or that, the Congress says there you can have X many active duty Marines any given budget year. So of 172,000 Marines, if that admin job wasn't important, it would go away and you'd make one more rifleman. And so telling that story and understanding that it's cool to be part of this city, and getting people fired up about being part of the whole and not the individual. The sum is greater than, or the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, right? That's got to be the message.
Yep. Shifra, do you have any thoughts? How to make government cool?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I would also say like there are really cool people in local government, and it's about like finding them and celebrating them. So like one of our favorite examples is in Boston, the city clerk's office, and I apologize because certainly it's called something more specific than that, but they made like a day in the life video just showing like how cool it is that you get to be there and like help people who want to get married today, like figure out a way to make it happen. And they have a story about like helping somebody, get to the judge's office 5 minutes before they close and how amazing that felt. And you're like changing somebody's life. And we love this video because it celebrates it. It puts it on TikTok. It's like easy to see. Another example is like in New York City, there was this like amazing person who was Miss New York in various beauty pageants. And she's also a sanitation supervisor. And she is just like such an incredible messenger for how working in the sanitation department allows you to make a huge difference in your community and what she loves about it. So there are all these people who are great messengers. And I think like the first thing we can all be doing is finding ways to celebrate them. I'll also throw out like Humans of Public Service is an Instagram account, and that's their whole mission. So there certainly are like big picture narrative shiftings that we all want to see happen so that people really understand the impact of state and local government. But I would say like in the immediate, it starts by finding the amazing people who are there and making sure that we let them shine.
Yes, and I would just add that working in local government here in New York City, I worked with the coolest, fastest moving, smartest people I've ever met. And there is nothing more rewarding than having that be your work environment and those be the folks that you get to mind meld with all day, every day. And so couldn't agree more that telling those stories is absolutely critical. 1 in 8 Americans works in state or local government, and they are the messengers to be sharing these stories. And so thinking about even the smallest of ways to get those stories out there is so, so important for recruitment. And Bill, I saw you come off mute. One more.
Yeah, so
thought?
Shifra made a great point, and it made me think that government is there to serve the population. And there is nothing cooler than making a positive impact in somebody's life.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. And if your government's not doing that, at whatever level, they're in the wrong business and they're not doing it right. So that's pretty cool.
That feels like an amazing closing statement. That is such a great note to end on. So thank you for saying that. And we just will do a little bit of wrap up and then we'll get everybody out of here just before 1 o'clock. So thank you again to everybody for being here. Thank you especially to Mayor Jones and to Bill for joining us and sharing all of your wisdom. Before we wrap up, Zara is going to drop in the chat a super quick poll just to get your feedback on this event. It can take you less than a minute and it'll really make a big difference for us to make these events good for you in the future. Don't forget to check out our case study, Mission Ready Recruitment. You can find it at workforamerica.org, or you can click the link in the chat. I also just want to take one moment to highlight another Work for America program that is relevant to all the state and local government hiring managers that we have on the call today. That program is called Civic Match, and it is our talent matching program connecting outgoing federal workers with high impact roles in state and local governments across the country. We are currently supporting more than 4,500 job seekers, and we're working across 136 cities and 43 states, and those numbers are going up every day. If you are interested in recruiting this incredible talent pool to your local government jobs, please reach out to us. That is at civicmatch.org. You can also get to it through workforamerica.org, which is on the screen. And if you'd like to learn more about any of our programs, about this case study, or get involved, please don't hesitate to reach out. We would love to hear from you. We would love to work together. And thank you again for being here. Have a great day, everybody. And with that, I'm going to close the webinar.